This is A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sanova, and let's go through the main headlines. President Donald Trump says the United States will help stranded ships in the Strait of Hormuz, but Iran is threatening an attack if that happens. Armenia hosts European leaders at 2 summits in Yerevan. And more leaked footage reveals alleged attempts to influence European institutions over Armenia-Azerbaijan relations. The United States is launching a naval escort mission in the Strait of Hormuz as tensions with Iran continue to disrupt the key waterway. But Iran says any U.S. interference in the strait will be considered a violation of the ceasefire, that it could launch an attack in response. Here is more.
U.S. President Donald Trump says the Washington will guide stranded vessels out of the Strait of Hormuz starting Monday. Posting on his Truth Social account, he described the effort, called Project Freedom, as a humanitarian move to help ships safely leave restricted waterways and resume normal trade. Trump did not name the countries involved, but warned that any interference would be dealt with forcefully. He also said U.S. officials are holding very positive talks with Iran that could lead to broader progress, though he gave no details on coordination. Regarding Hormuz, top Iranian lawmaker warned that any U.S. interference in the strait would violate a ceasefire. State-linked media said Tehran has received a U.S. reply to its latest peace proposal, delivered through Pakistan, and is reviewing it. Iranian reports said the proposal calls for U.S. forces to withdraw from near Iran's borders, an end to naval blockades on Iranian ports, and a halt to all hostilities, including Israel's offensive in Lebanon. The U.S. has not formally confirmed its response, though Trump reportedly called the proposal unacceptable. Shortly after Trump's announcement, a tanker reported being hit by unknown projectiles in the Strait of Hormuz. The United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Agency said the incident occurred about 78 sea miles north of the United Arab Emirates, with all crew reported safe. It is the second attack in the strait within 24 hours. The U.S. plan comes as hundreds of ships and up to 20,000 seafarers remain stuck in the strait due to the ongoing conflict. U.S. Central Command says it will support the mission with 15,000 personnel, more than 100 aircraft, warships, and drones. Iran has restricted most shipping in the Gulf for over 2 months, pushing energy prices higher, while some vessels have reported being fired upon and others seized.
Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghei has confirmed that Tehran has received the U.S. counter-proposals to its 14-point plan via mediator Pakistan, which is being reviewed by the Iranian officials. Our correspondent Turaj Shiralilo has more.
The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghei said it has been forwarded through Pakistan with answers of the United States to Tehran's proposals relayed last week to Washington. In an interview on the state-owned IRIB TV, he said that the U.S. counter-proposal is under review in Tehran, stressing that Iran's response to the U.S. non-point plan last week did not discuss the nuclear dispute at all. Iran has not revealed contents of its proposal, but according to the semi-official Tasnim and Fars news agencies affiliated to the Revolutionary Guards, it focuses on ending the war, not extending the ceasefire, and within 30 days instead of 2 months as suggested by the United States. They reported that guaranteeing non-aggression, withdrawing U.S. military forces from Iran's periphery, lifting the naval blockade, releasing Iran's frozen assets, paying compensation, lifting sanctions, ending the war on all fronts, including Lebanon, and a new mechanism for the Strait of Hormuz were in Iran's 14-point proposal. Over the weekend, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi held phone calls with the foreign ministers of Brazil, Germany, Oman, and Spain on Sunday, and also held phone contacts with his French, Italian, Japanese, and South Korean counterparts on Saturday. The Iranian Foreign Ministry said Araghchi's talks focused on bilateral relations and the latest regional and international developments, during which he briefed them on Tehran's initiatives to end the Israel-US imposed war on Iran. It is believed that Iran's top diplomat shared with his counterparts the details of Tehran's 14-point counter-proposal exchanged via the mediator Pakistan. Tura Shiralilu from Tehran, Foreign News.
Pakistan is intensifying its role as the primary mediator between the United States and Iran. Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar reaffirmed Islamabad's commitment to a diplomatic resolution during high-level talks on Sunday. It comes as Washington considers a 14-point Iranian peace proposal sent through Pakistani channels. Tehran's plan seeks to remove sanctions and to have the United States withdraw forces from the region in exchange for a ceasefire on all fronts. French President Emmanuel Macron is urging the United States and Iran to cooperate in reopening the Strait of Hormuz. He says diplomacy is the only way to unblock the strategic route. While the United States is beginning a mission to help trap crews, Macron has ruled out French participation in any military action.
Today, I'm looking at the situation. If the United States wants to reopen, or are ready to reopen, the Strait of Hormuz, that's very good. That's what we've been asking for since the beginning. But we're not going to participate in any operations using force within a framework which for my part doesn't seem clear. So we've built an ad hoc mission that we're working on. The military planning took place in London. But what we want most of all is a joint reopening between Iran and the United States. That's the only solution that will allow us to permanently reopen the Strait of Hormuz, allow free navigation, and do so without restrictions nor tolls.
Yerevan is hosting the 8th European Political Community Summit, bringing together dozens of leaders for talks focused on regional security and cooperation.
The 8th meeting of the European Political Community has begun in Armenia's capital, Yerevan, with leaders gathering for a series of high-level discussions. The summit opened with a roundtable focused on Ukraine, followed by an opening plenary session addressing European unity amid ongoing global crises. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan described the summit as a milestone for the country, highlighting unprecedented diplomatic engagement.
My first bilateral meeting with the President of Turkey took place on the margins of the mentioned first EPC summit in Prague. And now the Vice President of Turkey is here to participate in Yerevan's EPC summit and is the first Vice President of Turkey to come to Armenia. The Presidents of North Macedonia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, the European Parliament, Prime Ministers of the United Kingdom, Italy, Spain, Croatia, Ireland, Andorra, Finland, Estonia, Luxembourg, Norway, Slovenia, Kosovo, Liechtenstein are visiting Armenia for the first time ever. This is another reason to consider this summit historic for Armenia.
European Council President Antonio Costa said the forum is aimed at turning political dialogue into concrete cooperation and thanked Armenia for hosting it.
And I'm glad that again, like in the previous summits, the EPC will be a catalyst for action. Action in support of Ukraine, Moldova and Armenia, and also in building a European coalition against drugs.
Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, speaking via video link, recalled earlier discussions with European leaders on hosting the summit in Yerevan and his support of it.
I supported that, and in my turn asked, in order to preserve the balanced approach, to hold one of the next summits in Azerbaijan. Proposal was accepted, so I invite the members of EPC to Azerbaijan in May 2028. And by the way, Armenia also supported our candidacy. This is a clear indication that peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia is a reality.
Among those attending the summit in Yerevan are French President Emmanuel Macron, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is also taking part, marking Canada's first involvement in the European Political Community format. The summit continues with further discussions on security, connectivity and regional cooperation, alongside a series of bilateral meetings.
OPEC Plus producers are set to raise their oil production cap in June after the United Arab Emirates withdrew from the bloc. 7 countries, including Saudi Arabia, Russia and Kazakhstan, agreed to increase the cap by 188,000 barrels per day. The group said output levels could still be increased, paused or reversed depending on market conditions. It also said the decision would help address any overproduction recorded since January 2024. Higher oil prices are expected to give Russia's state budget an extra boost as global energy markets remain under pressure. Russia's finance minister said the additional revenue would amount to about $2.7 billion. However, so far this year, revenues are still expected to remain below the first 5 months of 2025. Ukraine says it has struck Russian energy targets, including 2 Shadow Fleet tankers near the Black Sea port of Novorossiysk. In Russia's northwest, dozens of Ukrainian drones targeted the major oil export hub of Primorsk, sparking a fire that was later contained. Russian authorities say no oil spill was reported, and more than 60 drones were intercepted. Moscow's mayor said a drone also struck a building in the capital, with emergency services responding and no injuries reported. Ukraine has not commented on the incident as both sides continue near daily drone exchanges. The UK is preparing to join a multi-billion-pound European loan scheme to support Ukraine. The move comes as European leaders gather for a key summit in Armenia.
The United Kingdom has begun negotiations to join a major European Union loan scheme worth around £78 billion, aimed at supporting Ukraine. Prime Minister Keir Starmer discussed the move at the European Political Community Summit in Yerevan, Armenia, where dozens of European leaders have gathered. The loan package approved by EU leaders last month is intended to fund Ukraine's defense and wider financial needs over the next 2 years, with most of the money going directly to military support. The package had been blocked for months by former Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who opposed further aid to Kiev. But his removal from office last month cleared the way for the deal to move forward. Keir Starmer said participation would help ensure Ukraine receives the equipment it needs, while also allowing British defence companies to access future contracts. The announcement is being seen as another step towards closer cooperation between the UK and the EU, particularly on security and defence, despite Britain having left the bloc. On the sidelines of the summit, the Prime Minister also met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who thanked the UK for its continued support. Meanwhile, Downing Street says further sanctions targeting Russian companies are expected later this week to disrupt military supply chains. Zena Farizadeh, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has sought to ease concerns over relations with Washington after U.S. President Donald Trump reduced the number of U.S. troops in Germany and introduced new increase on trade tariffs, raising questions about transatlantic ties. Merz spoke in a television interview stressing the importance of cooperation within the alliance.
I have to accept that the American president holds a different view on these issues than we do. But that does not alter the fact that I remain convinced that the Americans are important partners for us, the most important ones in the North Atlantic Alliance, and that we have a shared interest in Europe and America working together to end this conflict, and then, for example, to end the conflict, the war in Ukraine, to provide joint security guarantees for Ukraine. We have already achieved a great deal together in this regard.
To Syria now, where heavy rain has flooded parts of Aleppo. Farmers are scrambling to protect their land and crops.
Farmers in the Aleppo countryside of Syria are filling sandbags and covering crops with nylon. They're trying to hold back floodwater after days of heavy rain. Homes and farmland have been partly submerged, with water spreading across villages near the Al-Sia area. Local farmers say repeated breaches have left them watching their fields day and night, fearing more damage.
We have suffered material losses and can no longer afford to pay any further. The situation is very tragic. Regarding these embankments here that you see, the water level is approximately 5 meters. If this embankment breaks at this time, we are afraid of it. We have placed guards and are staying near our land because we fear for our crops.
The flooding has also reached homes, solar panels, and wide areas of agricultural land. Local officials say emergency teams were sent in to repair the breach and reinforce weakened sections of the embankment.
This year, due to heavy rains, significant pressure built up in the Al-Siha area in the southern Aleppo countryside, leading to a partial collapse of the earthen embankment, which caused flooding across approximately 560 hectares. We responded quickly to this situation, as all relevant departments were mobilized, and more than 12 excavators were deployed to repair the breach in the embankment and reinforce the weakened sections.
Authorities say teams are assessing the damage to farmland, while local committees have been formed with affected farmers. They have also contacted international partner organisations for help in supporting compensation efforts.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the escalating Ukraine-Russia energy infrastructure strikes. Stay tuned. Welcome back to A News. Our top story for discussion. Ukraine and Russia have exchanged some of the most intense long-range strikes in recent months, with Kiev targeting key Russian oil infrastructure in the Baltic and Black Sea regions, while Moscow continues large-scale drone and missile attacks across Ukraine. The escalation highlights how energy facilities, ports and shadow fleet tankers are now central to the economic dimension of this war. Among the key developments, Ukraine says it struck Russia's Primorsk oil terminal on the Black Sea, one of Moscow's major crude export hubs operated by Transneft, along with naval assets and vessels linked to sanctions evasion networks. Russia, meanwhile, launched hundreds of drones and missiles overnight, hitting multiple Ukrainian regions, including Odessa and Dnipro. This comes as European partners deepen support for Kiev, with the UK moving closer to joining EU-backed financing schemes for Ukraine and expanding sanctions on Russian military supply chains. To unpack the military and geopolitical implications of this escalation, I'm joined by Gustavo Darishtegui, former diplomat who speaks to us from Rabat, Morocco. Ambassador Darishtegui, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thanks. Ambassador Darishtegui, how significant is Ukraine's reported strike on the Primorsk oil terminal in terms of Russia's export capacity and energy revenues?
Well, it is a part of the audacious and I would dare say courageous strategy that has been developed by Ukraine in the last 2 or 3 years, with a huge buildup of their capacities of long-range strikes, with even creating their own ballistic missiles and even their own cruise missiles, which are an extremely sophisticated technology, that are capable of flying thousands of kilometers inside Russian territory. But one of the most significant developments that we need to understand that changing the fate of war is that probably the country in the world that has the most advanced anti-drone technology is doubtlessly Ukraine. To the extent that not only the Gulf states that have been subject to constant attacks from Iran to civilian targets, and this needs to be underlined, and have been successfully been defended not only by the anti-missile capacities that have been designed and produced and sold by the United States of America, but by the anti-drone capacities that have been designed by Ukraine. And let's not forget that very recently, President Zelensky visited all of those countries, selling that capacity and technology in exchange for financial help. And it is very important to note, and this is a diplomatic breakthrough, that one of the main allies of Russia in the Middle East is the United Arab Emirates. And in spite of that, the UAE has bought Ukrainian technology. And this is a major, major development. And furthermore, what you're saying is of an extreme importance. Yes, the exchange is very heavy because both sides are very clear that the patience and the capacity, the tiredness, the fatigue of donation and help is dying out. And of course, Russia has a huge problem, a demographic, because they cannot continue feeding their troops endlessly. They are cannon fodder, most of them. And the Ukrainians have lost at least 1 or 2 generations of young people, of young men and women that are fighting in the front. So this is a war that needs to end very, very soon. What are the conditions of the armistice? What are the conditions, not of a ceasefire, because either side doesn't want a ceasefire. They really want to end the conflict and to have some kind of conditions that are going to be sort of permanent. I don't think that it is in any way legal, or even, if you allow me to say so, ethical, that anybody in the world forces Ukraine to relinquish a part of its territory. I know that some kind of sacrifice is going to be made, because otherwise there will not be peace. But to actually bless this as the only way out is not moral. So probably right now, as we are speaking, the attacks of one and the other are not equally definable as legitimate or legal under international law. The aggressor has a burden on its shoulders that the defender does not have. Even if the defender strikes deep into the territory of the aggressor, those attacks are, under international law, to be considered legitimate defense.
Ambassador Darishtegi, in your view, can attacks on energy infrastructure meaningfully change Russia's battlefield posture or economy?
That is a very good question, and probably the key question. You see, yes. Let us think about how Russia exports its energy. One, of course, are the gas pipes that go towards Europe.
Yes.
And we know what that is going to produce, because there are the sanctions and whatever, and one is closed and the other one is only semi-operational. But 45% of the oil exports of Russia go out through the Baltic Sea.
Yes.
So they need to go through the Danish Straits. Denmark, such a small country, and people don't know this, is the key to the Baltic, is the key to the passage from the Baltic Sea to the North Sea, and from the North Sea to the Atlantic. The Germans put a remedy to this by creating the Kiel Canal, but this is a national thing, and it is very small. So right now, we need to understand that Russia is completely cornered in its export capacities, because to export out of the Black Sea, you need to go through the Strait of Hormuz, the Strait of the Bosphorus, and then Dardanelles, and then into the Mediterranean. And even if they have very good relations with Turkey, Turkey remains a country that is a member of NATO. And the same thing goes if you are to take this in a strategic way. The only fleet of the Russians that is free to go into open seas are the bases that are in the north, in the area of Murmansk, and Polyarny and the other ones. Because Vladivostok is controlled by South Korea and Japan. The Black Sea is controlled by Turkey, Greece, Italy, and the rest of NATO. And the Baltic fleet, the Baltic Sea has 10 countries that have that are on the Baltic Sea. 10. 9 are members of the NATO alliance. So as you can see, Russia is, unfortunately for them, but it is probably good news for everybody else, completely controlled as far as the projection of their force is concerned.
Ambassador Gustavo Darstege, thank you for joining us and sharing your insights on these fast-developing events. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. My best regards.
Thank you. After the break, we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region. Welcome back to A News, and now we turn to our regional stories. Baku's main seaport is expanding its capacity, with new infrastructure now coming online to handle rising cargo volumes. The latest upgrade is expected to improve efficiency and strengthen the port's role along key regional trade routes.
The Port of Baku is expanding its operational capacity as part of an ongoing modernization program. For the first time in its history, berth number 7, previously unused, has now been brought into active service. The newly commissioned berth is supported by a next-generation crane with a lifting capacity of 125 tons. The introduction of modern equipment and the activation of additional berth space come as cargo volumes along regional routes continue to grow, placing increasing pressure on port infrastructure. The development is also seen as strategically important for the Trans-Caspian international transport route, widely known as the Middle Corridor.
This step represents a significant move forward for us. By the end of the year, we aim to increase the port's container handling capacity from the current 150,000 TEU to 260,000 TEU. To achieve this, a systematic program of work is already underway. I should note that we have identified 4 key priority areas. One of these relates to the declining water level of the Caspian Sea. Based on the results of an international consortium tender, dredging works are planned to address this issue. At the same time, we are investing in modern technologies. This includes the acquisition of an additional Italian-made crane, which will allow for tandem operations. In addition, we plan to procure locomotives, forklift trucks, and container handling equipment. In total, 33 new units of machinery are expected to be acquired by the end of this year, extending into the early months of 2027.
With berth 7 now operational, the Port of Baku is positioning itself to handle growing demand for more efficiently reinforcing its role as a key logistics hub connecting Europe and Asia. Ayten Şükürova, Zöhrab Şirinov, A News.
Moving to regional logistics, Azerbaijan continues to facilitate vital transit operations. Today, the Bilajeri station dispatched 10 wagons carrying 678 tons of fertilizer en route to Armenia, marking a significant step in the ongoing corridor linking Russia and the region. Our Leyla Rahimli has more.
I'm reporting from the Bilajeri station, where Azerbaijan Railways continues to facilitate key transit operations. While ago, 10 wagons loaded with 678 tons of fertilizer were officially dispatched from the station en route to Armenia, marking another step in the ongoing logistics corridor linking Russia to Armenia through Azerbaijani territory. To give you some context on the momentum here, this follows a major dispatch just yesterday when 8 wagons carrying 536 tons of fertilizer was sent from Bilajeri toward the Büyükesik direction. When we look at the big picture, the numbers are quite substantial. To date, the transit volume moving through Azerbaijan includes over 25,000 tons of grain, nearly 2,000 tons of fertilizer and 68 tons of buckwheat. But that isn't all. Alongside this transit, Azerbaijan is also actively supplying essential energy resources. As it stands, direct exports from Azerbaijan to Armenia include over 8,500 tons of diesel, 979 tons of AI-92 and 2,955 tons of AI-95 premium gasoline. The logistics here at Bilecari are operating seamlessly as the cargo makes its way across the region. From the Bilecari station, this is the latest updates for now, and this is Leyla Rahimli with Zeynal Hasanov for A News.
The 8th European Political Community Summit has kicked off in Yerevan with more than 50 heads of state in attendance. Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev joined via video link and highlighted efforts in the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process. He also criticized some European institutions for what he called double standards in their position on the peace process.
Armenia hosts the 8th European Political Community Summit in its capital, Yerevan, on Monday, held under the motto Building the Future, Unity and Stability in Europe. The event has brought together nearly 50 heads of state and government officials. Discussions are focused on strengthening democratic resilience, developing connectivity, and enhancing economic and energy security. Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev addressed the meeting via video link, highlighting progress made by Azerbaijan and Armenia following his meeting at the White House in August last year.
After the de facto peace was achieved, Azerbaijan unilaterally lifted all transit restrictions to Armenia imposed in the beginning of the 90s. Up to now, 28,000 tons of cargo to Armenia was delivered through the territory of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan went even further. We started to supply our oil products, gasoline and diesel, for the first time to Armenia, thus starting their trade relations. So far, 12,000 tons of our oil products have been exported to Armenia.
President Aliyev also noted the development of the Trump route for international peace and prosperity, adding that it will form part of the middle corridor connecting Asia to Europe. He also criticised the European Parliament and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe over their position on the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process.
On September 2023, Azerbaijan put an end to separatism in Karabakh. We ourselves implemented 4 UN Security Council resolutions adopted in 1993 and remained on paper for 30 years. 4 months after that, PASE imposed sanctions on our delegation. Unfortunately, double standards is today a kind of a modus operandi for PASE. Azerbaijan's territorial integrity has the same value that of any other country, and in this issue, double standards are unacceptable. Now about European Parliament. This gathering, instead of supporting the peace process, prefers to sabotage it. Since May 2021, 6 months after the end of the Second Karabakh War, until 30th April 2026, European Parliament adopted 14 resolutions full of insults, lies about Azerbaijan. Just imagine, 14 resolutions in 5 years, kind of an obsession.
In response, Azerbaijan's parliament on May 1st officially suspended cooperation with the European Parliament.
New footage featuring the former prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Luis Moreno Ocampo, has emerged. In the video, Ocampo is allegedly discussing an artificial intelligence project linked to Armenia and the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan. The material claims the project expanded from academic research into broader use involving media, politics and international networks. Here is more.
Minval Politica has released a third set of footage it claims shows former International Criminal Court prosecutor Luis Moreno Ocampo discussing an artificial intelligence project linked to Armenia and Karabakh region of Azerbaijan. According to the outlet, Ocampo describes plans to build a platform using AI in cooperation with academics from the Brazilian University of São Paulo and specialists in physics and technology. He allegedly says the project uses advanced computing, including supercomputers, to model global political dynamics.
And the next step for me is see how can organize this in a platform to use artificial intelligence to do this properly. So I'm working with the Sao Paulo University, the physics department on a project on artificial intelligence. Now I spend days in Spain with some friends of mine who are involved in this type of companies, investigating how the Armenia project is a pilot of a company using artificial intelligence.
Si vamos a hablar de esto, es otra cosa que... No quiero asustarte, pero yo hago muchas cosas. También soy profesor en la Universidad de San Pablo, en Brasil. Trabajo con un físico, con el departamento de física. Estamos usando la física moderna, que es básicamente la inteligencia artificial, para modelizarlo y tratar de organizar el orden global y el desorden global. Y entonces tenemos base financia eso, tenemos supercomputadoras trabajando en eso. Y pusimos el foco al principio que vamos a hacer orden global en general. Después dijimos, no, es muy complicado, hagamos genocidio. Y después dijimos, hagamos una Karabaj, que yo tengo mucha información. Estamos sacando una Karabaj. Ahora, yo veo que este producto académico va a ser un producto académico. Yo tengo que sacar el jugo de yo. Estoy tratando de armar una compañía que va a ser cross-border, que transforme la información que produzcamos acá, que llegue a los políticos que toman decisiones, que llegue a los decision makers, que eso es no técnica precisa, que llegue a los mainstream media, social media, para que sea masivo, deben que llegue a otros académicos para que solidifique.
Pero tú estás desarrollando un programa utilizando inteligencia artificial.
Sí.
Porque hay programas, hay think tanks que se juntan para aconsejar a la gente que toma decisiones y lo existe hace mucho tiempo. Pero
Minval Politica says the material suggests efforts to combine academic work, media outreach, and technology for political influence. It also repeats earlier claims about anti-Azerbaijan lobbying networks and funding links involving Armenian and Russian-Armenian figures. A News has not independently verified the footage or the allegations.
The High Representative of the European Union, Kaja Kallas, is set to visit Azerbaijan on Tuesday. The focus of the high-level meetings in Baku will be on strengthening bilateral relations and regional cooperation. During the visit, Kallas will hold talks with the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ceyhun Bayramov. Key topics include strategic partnership, energy dialogue, and regional security. Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the 8th European Political Community Summit and its impact on South Caucasus geopolitics. See you shortly. Welcome back to A News. Now we shift our focus to a regional story for discussion. The 8th European Political Community Summit in Yerevan comes at a pivotal moment, with leaders linking regional diplomacy to broader European security and connectivity. From the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace momentum to debates over Europe's strategic autonomy and shifting transatlantic ties, the South Caucasus is now firmly on Europe's geopolitical map. Joining us now is Melih Demirtas, a political analyst and former diplomat, speaking to us from Ankara. Mr. Demirtas, welcome and thank you for joining us on A News.
Thank you, Mr. Asuna, for having me.
Thanks. Mr. Demirtas, how significant is this EPC summit for the South Caucasus at this particular moment?
Yes, it is the very critical times, as you also mentioned in your introduction, for both, I think, the region, but also the wider region. Just in the southern section of Armenia, also Azerbaijan, we just saw a very, of course, heightened tension still in Iran, but not only in Iran, but also in the Middle East, but also in Ukraine. We can see this encirclement of all this conflict still affecting these actors. I mean, Armenia and the government of Mr. Pashinyan really struggles to find a different road in these last years. Of course, after the, again, tensive years with its neighbor, Azerbaijan, and with the very legitimate victory of our brother country, Azerbaijan, against Armenia, we can see Pashinyan took a road which really leads to another strategy, which can be maybe summarized as a multidimensional, multipolar strategy. Mr. Pashinyan's bureaucrats really do have important maybe relation now with some important Western countries, as we all see, especially in this last few days. Many leaders are now in, I think, Yerevan, from France to Britain to Canada, Ukraine. Also, our vice president is there. We can see, I think, Mr. Pashinyan's strategy is really working nowadays. And I think his first messages, I mean, Mr. Pashinyan's messages, therefore important. He just said that we are in a very critical moment. We are in a very critical moment of tensions, he said, because of this because of this Ukrainian crisis. And really, we do want to make some maybe stable and very maybe peaceful acts in this new political community summit. And I think the first news coming from Yerevan seems to be positive. And we are hopeful that for the South Caucasus, but also for the wider region, we can see much more positive environment thanks to such summits, thanks to such gatherings.
Mr. Demirtas, Azerbaijani president addressed the summit via video link. How will European leaders likely perceive President Aliyev's criticism of the European Parliament and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, despite his praise for the European Council and Antonio Costa, especially amid allegations involving the former ICC prosecutor Luis Moreno Campo?
Yes, unfortunately, Europe is not a unitary body, Mr. Asano. We must understand that in Europe, we have, of course, because of this democratic, maybe quote-unquote, structure, because of this multi-voice, maybe presence in various bodies of Europe, we can say that some bureaucrat or some maybe president or elected body can declare something, and another body can really give another declaration. Think about this von der Leyen's latest statements, for example, about Turkey and about the other countries. I mean, the same is true for Azerbaijani case. And I think Mr. President Aliyev made a truth, I mean, also declaration that there are still some biases, there are still some very negative maybe calculations against Azerbaijan, despite of, I think, Armenian diplomacy, despite of this working, I mean, situation between these neighboring countries, I mean, Azerbaijan, Armenia, also Georgia, also Turkey, we can see somebody still in European Parliament, also in, I think, European Commission and the other partners, we can say that some biases and some, I think, rightist we can call, some maybe Orientalist we can call, still opinions are existent. But these judges, of course, they have some other opinions, they have some other calculations, we already know that. Some connections they have politically, economically, we do not know, of course, the details. These are some documents we cannot maybe openly discuss still for some diplomatic reasons. But still, Mr. Aliyev really make an important maybe presence, still also in Armenia, still with its maybe Caucasian partners. And such a diplomacy, such a working diplomacy, can really give this old style European maybe biased diplomacy and biased policy making, which is also harms Turkish, Armenian, and also many other countries, especially in our region.
Mr. Demirtas, what role has the EPC format played in facilitating Armenia-Turkey normalization, and how important is Turkey's participation, including Vice President Cevdet Yılmaz, in this summit?
It is maybe the important news, one of the most important news, especially in this summit, because as you all know, we have not a very easy relation with Armenia for many years, because of course, historical baggages, because of some Cold War maybe baggages, because of some, of course, Soviet Union and then Russian maybe presence, but then, of course, United States and European tactics in maybe having some diplomatic calculations upon Armenia. But I think nowadays, starting, as I said in my first response, with maybe Mr. Pashinyan's understanding of this changing diplomacy making, he's really making another style of diplomacy. He's also under pressure of some domestic calculations. We all know that there will be an election in Armenia soon, but still, he really struggles to make something differently. And because of this, I think our Vice President is there, Mr. Cevdet Yılmaz. His first messages also comes from Yerevan, positively, from economy to digitalization, to some common cultural projects with Armenia, to, of course, new collaborations in economic fields and transportation, especially connectivity. I think the new era is also so positive between Armenia and Turkey. Likewise, in Azerbaijan and Armenia, we see in these last maybe years, we can maybe see in much more positive terms because of this community's destinies, Mr. Hasanov. Because the communities, especially young generations, need such a real and new developmental era, especially compared to these crisis areas, which is so near us. We must really behave in much more rational and diplomatic way, as also Mr. Yılmaz, our Vice President, said in his last declarations.
So, speaking at the summit, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky called for a unified European voice. Are we seeing that unity in practice?
This is a difficult question of this last year. Thanks to, again, maybe relations which are really deteriorating between the United States and Europe. And I think what Mr. Zelensky also himself was under so heavy critics in United States public opinion, as you remember, I think, from Mr. Zelensky's very famous visit to Oval Office, to Mr. Trump and Mr. G.D. Vance. After those days, and with, of course, increasing tensions with Iran, many things has changed for this transatlantic relations. And I think in Europe, some important diplomacy makers and new maybe policy making style starts to be shining. For Mr. Macron, it is different. For Mr. Starmer, it is so different. For Mr. Merz and much more transatlantic maybe defenders, it is so much different. But still, they're also finding a new road to understand this new world order. And I think Mr. Zelensky's just in this point pushes or underlines that Europe must really find a way to define itself in this new geopolitics. And I think Mr. Trump's just in today latest declarations about the Strait of Hormuz, about this heightened tensions with Iran, can give another signal that Mr. Zelensky and also the European leaders must find this diplomacy, especially this realpolitics new structure, like in the summit, in this European Political Committee summit. But it is not an easy job, Mr. Hasanov, because it also needs, and it also necessitates, as I said in my latest response, a real rational diplomacy. It must be purified from this Orientalist, from this historical baggages, especially biased maybe diplomacy making. And after that, we can find a real maybe European common voice, which can also include Azerbaijan, Turkey, and even Armenian sense, especially as a very regional kind of maybe diplomacy making here in our very important atmosphere and peaceful atmosphere.
So with Donald Trump announcing troop withdrawals, is Europe truly ready to take more responsibility for its defense?
This is the question of also what we are also thinking, maybe what we're also talking in our latest programs always. Mr. Trump decided to withdraw, for example, thousands of soldiers from Germany, which also starts to give the signal that the real post-Second World War era has come to an end. Yes, we can say this. And now, of course, Mr. Putin's waiting to re-evaluate its position, this Russian new position. We all know that the Russian traditional diplomacy making is still very strong. It can really also affect still Armenia, also Azerbaijan, also Turkey in some ways. Also Chinese influence cannot be denied in our regions for connectivity and other projects. But still, we can find that this Mr. Trump's ideology is not different, I think, than Mr. Bush, maybe than Mr. Obama's, or even Mr. Clinton's and the other presidents in the Cold War times. United States is a different entity. It can really make another policy which can maybe prioritize, first of all, United States interest. And also it can be a very outsider to all regions, even to Europe, even to Caucasia, even, of course, our region, Turkey and Azerbaijan. So we must think, as a common voice, we must think really rationally. Because of this, maybe we can also give a message to the United States that, yes, they can be very helpful in some matters, but especially in such a time, they must be really stable and they must be really diplomatic in some crises, and first of all, Iran.
Melih Demirtaş, thank you very much for talking to A News. Always a pleasure having you with us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for all the latest updates.